Welcome, welcome, everybody. What do you know? Clemson is headed to the playoff. Not sure how many people thought that was, you know, a realistic possibility sitting there after that excruciating loss to South Carolina. Yet, here we are. Seventh playoff appearance, first since 2020. And not surprisingly, they had to make it interesting in that fourth quarter. I mean, this is a team that's just had some fourth quarter issues. Everybody is going to have their opinions on what those issues are, or let's just say everybody's going to have their opinions on why those issues exist, the reasoning for those issues. And Clemson winning that thing turned out, Clemson was a bid stealer, kind of like in basketball. Clemson getting in pretty much knocked out Alabama. And, if you're most Clemson fans I know despise Alabama. So that's just the icing on top of the cake. It was definitely an interesting game, though. And before we dive into it, I want to thank my sponsors over at A-Glass. Stan, Turner, Michael Cox, those guys over there. They can take care of all your auto glass needs. 2 locations right here in the PD, one in Florence, one in Sumter. Get yourself a free quote today, myaglass.com. Visit them in person. I have the info scrolling across the bottom of the screen there throughout the show. It'll have the addresses, the phone numbers, anything you need. They do auto glass replacement and repair. A-Glass for when you need a glass. Definitely an interesting game. That's going to be my word for it. Clemson gets up big, takes a 17-point lead into the fourth quarter and can't hold it. Again, depending on who you talk to, you'll probably get a different reason as to why and the reasons for the why. We can talk about those here tonight. I'll give you my take on it. And I know there's going to be a lot of finger pointing at that defense, but I'm going to point the finger at the offense. You scored 21 points in that first quarter, and then you don't really do much of anything else the rest of the way. You don't do anything in the fourth quarter of note. You got to play complementary football. You can't put it all on the defense for the whole second half. That offense SMU has is just too good. They've got too many playmakers. You're not going to hold them down forever. The offense has to do their part, and I didn't think they did, particularly in that fourth quarter. And not Phil Moffitt being hurt and then Haynes getting hurt, which I don't think Haynes was going to alleviate much of that anyways, but certainly doesn't help. But you kind of are what you are at this point. And I've seen a lot of people talking about how they went um, conservative in the fourth quarter. I watched the game back today. I did not get that feeling. I didn't think they went overly conservative. They were still trying to attack the middle of the field. Heck, they threw the ball about almost twice as many times as they ran it in that fourth quarter. Um, again, we can always. I'm not going to dig too deep into play calling because you never know what the play caller's thinking or what he's trying to set up. But you can always point to a play caller here, play call there that you don't like. I hate those, pitches to the outside from off. They never work. I wish they scrap them, but that's about as deep as I'm getting into play calling. But now you get to go on the road and go to Texas, who fields a very, very, very strong defense. Offense been a little inconsistent of late, but that defense is legit. It's just as legit as South Carolina. They might not be quite as good as South Carolina in spots, but they're similar in a lot of ways to talent level and production and those kind of things. And Clemson's a double-digit underdog, and probably rightfully so. But we can break it all down. If you want to dive into some basketball, we can do that too. Big win over Kentucky last week. Then Clemson goes on the road and wins at Miami, a place that's been a absolute house of horrors for them a lot of times during Brad Brownell's tenure. But go get a gritty win there and firmly entrenched inside the top 20 now. So right where they belong. They've got a big win over Kentucky, the big win over San Francisco, who was a tournament team last year. They got the big win over Penn State, go on the road and get an ACC win over Miami. It's just off to a really good start. But I got a feeling most people's going to want to talk about football. If you want to talk about basketball, you can drop the comment and we'll go there. But I got a feeling we're going to stick to football most of the night. And I got a feeling I know where a lot of these are going to go. And I will try to address some of them best I can. Yeah, here's kind of what I was talking about. Clemson's last 3 games, they've trailed for a total of 88 seconds. And you got some fourth-quarter collapsing going on, absolutely. Largest deficit has been 3 points, yet they've coughed up 2 last-minute leads and actually lost a game. Dabo Stallings, I don't even know what that means, but if you're trying to compare a program of today to a program of 30 years ago, I'm not even going there because it's apples and oranges. And I get it, man. There's something going on with this team in the fourth quarter. They don't know how to finish. And, I'd like to see the defense get a stop when they need it, but I thought SMU just made some plays, just flat out made some plays. I personally, I would prefer seeing that offense be able to put their foot on somebody's throat and put them away. And I already see people griping about the play calling, but I didn't think they got conservative in the fourth quarter. I just think Clemson didn't make any plays, particularly on their last – I think it was their last offensive possession right before SMU tied it up. You got a third down. I think Clemson had picked up 1 or 2 first downs, and they're facing a third down, and Klubnik's got TJ Moore open right here for a first down. Instead, he tries to force it into Antonio. And he's lucky that ball wasn't picked off. Players not executing, man. You can call all the plays you want, but if the players don't execute them, I mean, you're kind of banging your head against the wall. I didn't have a huge issue with the play calling. But, yeah, there's definitely something about this team that they don't know how to finish. I can't quite put my finger on it. I do think they got a little conservative in the fourth quarter against South Carolina. But I didn't get that sense Saturday night. I thought they stayed pretty aggressive for the most part. I thought SMU did a good job of starting to try to take away some of the deeper stuff in that second half and in the fourth quarter. And I thought Clemson was trying to take advantage of the middle of the field. They just couldn't make the plays. Matter of fact, there was a couple of times where SMU defensive back just made a heck of a play. I knew this one was coming. Do I think Adam Randall could take reps at running back from off a banged up Hayes out? No, I do not. We are overloaded at wide receiver, and Randall deserves some touches. I think it would be a good way to get him the ball. It'll also be a good way to get your quarterback killed. You cannot run a running back out there, a guy out there at running back that has no experience playing the position, has no idea how to block and protect the quarterback. There's so much more to it than just handing him the ball and letting him run. And I've seen people today say, well, just put him in on a first down or second down and handing the ball. Well, then you are getting predictable. Nobody's going to expect you to throw the ball if they think you've got a running back out there that can't, pick up the blitz or pass protect. If you're talking about a position move during the spring, we're having a different conversation. But if you're trying to get him up to speed in 2 weeks, there's just way too much that goes into running back to do that. You kind of got what you got at this point. Don't think Randall has shown the ability to stay healthy at wide receiver. He's been healthy for the last 2 years for the most part. He had a little finger issue last year that he played through, but other than that, he's been healthy since his freshman year. So, I mean, I would strongly disagree with calling that guy fragile. Is there anyone else other than Sammy B with experience? If we're talking about running back, he don't even have any experience. He's never taken a snap at this level. I mean, you're not taking that guy out and putting him on the other side of the field anyways. That's a non-starter. It's not going to happen. I mean, you still got Keith Adams, who I think showed on Saturday night why he's not gotten very many opportunities. Signaling for that fair catch on that kickoff was one of the most boneheaded things I've seen all season long. Just inexcusable. You cannot do it. And then Haynes returns one that he had no business returning, and he was told not to return. Just some inexplicable stuff on kickoffs there early in that second half. And Adams shows why that the staff doesn't have a whole lot of faith in him at this point. But you got who you got at this point. Should the automatic bye for conference champions be scrapped? I was never a fan of going to 12 to begin with, and I'm definitely not a fan of automatic qualifiers. I hate them. It did exactly what I thought it was going to do. It opened the door for a 3-loss conference champion to make the college football playoff. And me personally, I'm not a big fan of that. I don't care if it is Clemson. I am not a fan of putting 3-loss teams in the playoffs. I wouldn't have been a fan of Bama making it. They should have been eliminated as soon as they lost that third game, in my opinion. Of course, they weren't since they play in the FCC, or the SEC. But that's a whole different discussion. But yeah, they're not going to be scrapped. What they would do and what they're going to do, I guarantee it. When this current, format is done with, I think it's after the 26th season, they'll expand it to 16, and they'll make sure there are 4 teams from the SEC minimum, 4 teams from the Big Ten minimum. You can bank on that. Hey, that's coming. What an awesome finish. I am scared it would have went the opposite direction in overtime. I don't think anybody had any faith Clemson was winning that game in overtime based on what they'd seen in the second half and particularly in the fourth quarter. The offense just couldn't do anything at all. And I thought SMU did a good job of starting to take away some of the stuff down the field and tightened up on some coverage. And the receivers, for the most part, there just wasn't anything there. Their DBs made some plays. I thought, I can't remember if it might have been in the second half when Cade had Wesco open down the field and it just went off his fingertips. Me personally, I think that's a ball he's got to catch. But yeah, it was good that they ended it right there. And how about Hoosier after having all those kicks blocked? And I don't know if people are aware of this or not. And I was told about this right before the South Carolina game, and I had kind of forgotten about it since Clemson never attempted a field goal in that game. But they have actually, field goals are usually kicked 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Clemson's actually backed it up, an extra yard or two. He was on that winning kick. He was 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage, which made the field goal a yard longer than it would have been if he was, at the normal distance. And they still had some protection issues. You saw it. The one he missed, they had guys coming free from the left side. The one he made before the game winner, there were some protection issues on that one on the left side. So it's definitely something they got to take a long, hard look at why they can't get that stuff fixed. Portal. Seriously, though, surely Dabo goes hard for a wide receiver. Lost 2 so far. Total count is what, 8 used to be. I think they got 9 or 10 on scholarship. I had to go back and look. They had a 9 or 10 on scholarship for this season. I think the number's 10. But right now, you got 2 going out, 1 coming in, and you're going to lose more. There's already some whispers of other wide receivers that are probably heading out the door. I've already heard 3 names, and that would put you. And I do not expect Antonio back next year. That would put you losing 6 wide receivers and bringing 1 in. They're not going to have any other choice. There's not going to be no choice. You're going to have to go to the portal. Otherwise, you're going to have Wesco and Moore, assuming those guys come back, and Tyler Brown. Assuming nobody poaches those guys, you're going to have those guys, and really, that's it. Except for Juju Preston, if all those guys leave. I think Clemson's going to have to take a long, hard look at defensive end. It's been an issue all season long. It was an issue again Saturday night. It didn't matter if Denoff was out there or Lawson was out there. They just keep getting caught up in the wash and cannot get the edge set on running plays. Continuously over pursue and just leave running lanes wide open for the quarterback to escape. Just happened over and over Saturday night. And it's definitely a position they're going to have to look to address. And wide receiver is going to be another one. Look at what SMU is doing with a wide receiver converted run back. And they converted him in the spring where he had all of spring to learn the position. And when they converted him, they said it on the telecast. He didn't even know what the A-gap was. You're just not going to convert a wide receiver into a running back in 2 weeks. It's next to impossible. I'm not going to go as far as speaking in absolutes and say it can never happen. But the chances are somewhere between slim and none. I don't know that Randall's ever played running back. He ran a little bit of Wildcat at Myrtle Beach in high school, but that's not nearly the same thing as playing running back and having to worry about protecting the quarterback. I'm glad you tune in, man. I very much appreciate it. Do we have a realistic shot in Austin, or is this a rough matchup? I'll be honest with you. If Clemson can play, complimentary football and do it for 4 quarters, I think they can play with anybody. The problem is we've just not seen them do it yet. We see them do it for a half like they did Saturday night. That first half might have been as well as they played all year. the defense was playing well, the offense was playing well. It started slowing down in the second quarter. Don't get me wrong, but just overall the first half, I thought the defense was lights out. Jennings was struggling with the pressure. Their pass catchers were hearing footsteps and dropping passes, and you just got to find a way to do it for 4 quarters. I think if Clemson can play complimentary football for 4 quarters, they could absolutely play with Texas. I wholeheartedly believe that. I just don't know that they can do it. We've not seen them do it all year long. I don't know why anybody would think they would now. We're at the point in the season where, you kind of are who you are. And I think Clemson is who they've shown us to be at this point, a team that's just, going to be playing really well one moment and start stinking it up the next. And, I don't think these coaches have found a way to pull them out of that. I might not fully understand how rev sharing works, but if Clemson gets $20.5 million every year, won't every other school, in addition to NIL, collect this? How will we be able to compete? Every other school will get up to $20 million to distribute how they see fit. Not, they can spend 80% on football, 10% on basketball, 10% on baseball, however they want to do it. The school gets to choose how they want to spend it. There won't be anybody that spends more of that money on football than Clemson. I think about all but 2 million of us going towards football. You'd have to figure out what that percentage is. I hadn't done that, but that's what, we've been told anyways. As part of the House settlement, both sides have agreed to there being some guardrails on NIL. So some of that's supposed to be reined in. And it's not going to, it's going to have to be legit NIL deals, not pay for play, where the collectors are just paying these guys. And there will absolutely be people trying to get around it, find loopholes in the rules and stuff. But it's also going to be overseen by a third party, not the NCAA. Now, there's still some stuff to be worked out from my understanding, but this is how it's supposed to be. And if you get caught trying to subvert the rules or get around them or anything like that, you lose money from your rev share. So, we'll see how it plays out. But if you're giving Clemson $20 million to spend on its roster every year, there's that does nothing but help. You don't need Clemson to be able to outbid everybody. You just need them to be able to make competitive offers. And if you can make a competitive offer, even if it's a little bit less than what somebody else is offering, then you can sell them on everything else the school offers, which is what Clemson was so good at before the NIL stuff came. But that's going to be the thing with it, the NIL stuff, because it's definitely not going away. But if it's reined in some, and then there's some guardrails put on it, that the way they've agreed to do. Again, both sides, I think it will help a lot. It's just going to depend on, how it's overseen and how stringent those guardrails are. I don't think anybody has the answer to that yet. Wes's defense in the fourth quarter is most questionable part of college football playoff success. I'm going the other way. To me, it's how you got to have the offense, man. You can't leave your defense hanging out to dry for a whole half of football, particularly when you don't have the depth you had 3, 4, 5 years ago. I keep seeing people moaning about Clemson being in this prevent defense the whole fourth quarter. They weren't. There were a couple of times they were running a 3-3-5, and there were that last drive they were trying to keep everything in front of them and make SMU drive the field instead of picking up big chunks, which is kind of what most coaches do in that situation. Not necessarily a prevent, I guess you could say it was. But most of the night they were lined up in a 4-man front and running out of a 4-3 base. I think. Again, I just think SMU made some plays in that fourth quarter that they didn't that they weren't making in the first three. You ended up getting some favorable matchups like that big tight end on Barrett Carter. They schemed that open a couple of times. One of them was a touchdown throw. The other teams out there trying to make plays too. I think sometimes we lose sight of that fact. And don't get me wrong. Now, I've got some. There's definitely been some things that I've questioned with the defense this year, but I didn't see a whole lot Saturday night. Am I going to Austin? Yes, I am. No, Clemson's having a hard time running the ball. Maffa's been banged up all season, and he's just gotten worse and worse as the season's gone on, and he's not going to be better by the time the Texas game rolls around. It's not something that's going to heal in 2 weeks. And they just haven't really had anybody behind him that they trust. I think they were going to try and lean on Haynes a good bit Saturday night until he got hurt, but I thought there were a couple of examples in that game where you can tell, he's got great vision. He's got great speed. He's got the makings of being a great back. I think he just needs to add a little bit more strength. He goes down a little too easy sometimes, but that just, you need to get a little bit creative. You need to, you can use screen passes. You can use pop passes. There's all things you can do to kind of offset the running game struggling. I thought they tried to do a little bit of that the other night, but the biggest thing you can do is try to get Cade's legs going. I would have liked to have seen him run it a little more the other night. I forget how. I think he ended up with like 13 carries, but 3 of those came at the end of the first half when they were just doing those QB sneaks to run out the first half. So don't even really count them. And this game in Austin, I'd like to see him run it a minimum of 15 times. I mean, just think back when Clemson was at their best, the QB run was a big part of it. And, you might not see it much during the season, but they really started to lean on it in the postseason with Watson and Lawrence, and I think they're going to have to do that again here. See, I don't necessarily agree with this last part either. The offense went cold. That definitely happened. Offense went cold, hung defense out to lose. West decided to stop pressuring the QB situation. I don't know that they decided to stop pressuring the QB. I don't know that I agree with that. They were still getting pressure on Jennings for much of the fourth quarter. He was just getting out of it. He extended some plays with his legs because the ends can't set the freaking edge, and he was able to make something out of nothing a few times in that fourth quarter. Now, on that final drive, there were some instances where they went 3-3-5, and I don't have any problem with that. Make them drive the field. Do not get beat over the top. That's the one thing you can't do. Again, I didn't really have a problem with some of the stuff in the fourth quarter as far as scheme and what they were trying to do. I think a lot of times, again, we forget, man, players got to go out and execute what they're told. Nobody told Keith Adams to fair catch that ball that he didn't even try to catch. Nobody told Jay Haynes to take that kickoff out of the end zone. I mean, I'm just using 2 examples here. There's a lot of times that these players go out and do something that they weren't coached to do. And, they at the end of the day, it's all about execution. You got to go out and execute. And I think SMU did a much better job of executing in the fourth quarter than Clemson did. Easy is about to get the workload, I believe. Well, I don't know, man. If I would have thought we'd have seen him some Saturday night, but obviously he is not where they trust him yet. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. 46% or nearly half of all points scored against Clemson to come in the fourth quarter. Correct. And in the first half of the season, a bunch of those were against the scrubs, or not scrubs, the backups on defense. See North Carolina State, where they scored all those points in the fourth quarter, and a couple of those other games. In the last month, the month of November, the offense has just not been consistent. They're not playing complementary football. You know, the offense didn't do squat against Louisville. The offense didn't do squat against Pitt in the second half. They went large chunks of the game against Virginia Tech where they didn't do anything. Didn't do squat in the second half against South Carolina. You just got you can't put it all on the defense. Clemson's been so good at being able to do that over the past few years, and the defense kept holding up. This year it's not, which means now more than ever you need that offense to step up and do its part. And I just don't know that. I think that offense SMU has is too good to be held down for 4 quarters. The fact that you were able to beat them and not do much of anything for the entire second half, should feel very fortunate. Don't you think Clemson offense should make adjustments like SMU did in the second? Who's to say they didn't? I mean, do you know that they didn't do anything different? I thought they started trying to attack the middle of the field more in the second half. I think they did try to adjust. I just don't think the players executed. And I think the defensive back, the secondary of SMU made some really good plays in that second half. Really good plays on some of those throws that when they were trying to attack the middle of the field. So, I mean, I just don't know that it's true to say that Clemson didn't make any adjustments in the second half. I just think that's the easy thing. I think that's the easy thing to go to when you don't see success. Well, we need to adjust. We need to do – I mean, what kind of adjustments are you talking about? Let's be specific. It's easy to say that we need to adjust. What are we talking about adjusting? What do they need to do more? Again, they ran it twice as many. They passed the ball twice as many times as they ran it in that second half. It's not like they went out and got overly conservative and was handing it off to Maffa 3 times in a row every drive. I think they did adjust what SMU was doing and just didn't work. Do you think legitimately we will take portal guys just due to our lack of depth in this class with the expected guys? There's no way they can't. I was already told Clemson's going to do what they can to add a defensive end. But if what I'm hearing ends up taking place with the wide receivers, they have to. There's no other way around it. They will be forced to, because you're talking about losing about half the room, which is what's going to happen when you have 2 true freshmen come in and beat out everybody on the roster. Those guys are going to head on out and look for better opportunities elsewhere. And everybody will say, oh, money this, money that. Well, Stellato ain't leaving over money. Noble Johnson ain't leaving over money. And the other 3 guys I've heard, and then if that comes to fruition, none of them is going to be about money. It's going to all be about where they are on the depth chart and where they would be on the depth chart next year, because none of those guys, it don't matter how hard people's going to say, well, they quit, should have put in the work. It don't matter how hard they work. None of them are passing Wesco or more on that depth chart, barring one of those guys getting hurt. So, yeah, the answer to your question is yes. I'm not addressing any coaching staff hiring or firing, anything like that. We can discuss that when the season's over. I'll just say that I'll be surprised if there's not at least one change made to the staff. That's about all I'm going to say on that. At the start of the year, we wanted to make the playoff, and we are there. Absolutely 100%, man. Nobody should care how you got there. All you want is an opportunity, and now you see if you can take advantage of that opportunity. You took advantage of the form. You didn't make the rules. You take advantage of the format that's in place. You know that all you have to do is go out and win your conference, and you're pretty much guaranteed a spot, especially if you're one of those Power Four conferences. Um, you don't have to worry about what you do out of conference. You just need to go out and win your conference. And I keep seeing people talking about Clemson backdooring their way into the ACC championship. I could not disagree with that more. It's not Clemson's fault they finished ACC play 3 weeks before Miami did, or 2 or 3 weeks before Miami did. Clemson finished a full game up in the standings. There were no tiebreakers that decided who went. They very much earned their way in, and they very much earned their way into the playoff under the rules that we are currently operating under. And as you say, you want to get in, and here they are. Now let's see what they can do with it. That fourth quarter, though, the defense kept giving Brashard Smith all the room he needed to catch. That was a big problem. I'll tell you one thing this defense has got a problem with: defending the wheel route. The next time they defend one successfully will be the first time this year, I do believe. But again, specifically on that last drive, man, they were trying to keep everything in front of them, which is going to leave, the flats and stuff open. I mean, it just is what it is. You don't want to get beat over the top. You're trying to if they're going to score, you want to make them do it. You want to make them drive the field. I understand that mindset. It's what a lot of coaches do in those situations. You don't want to get overly aggressive and give up a 60-yard touchdown. Too many drop balls. Cade missed some throws. Got to give the D a breather in the fourth against up tempo. That's another thing I thought the defense struggled with a little bit was SMU's tempo in that fourth quarter. I do think they got a little bit tired, which goes back to the offense not doing anything and keeping them on the field for most of the fourth quarter. But I do think there were at least 3 drops that Clemson receivers had. The one I mentioned about Wesco, I counted that one as a drop. I thought he should have caught it. TJ Moore had one he should have caught, that back shoulder throw. And yeah, Kate, that throw late in the fourth quarter on that third down where he had TJ Moore and Antonio there close together, kind of. I'm not even sure why they were that close together in the same spot, but he tried to get it to Antonio. He should have hit Moore out there. That was a bad decision. Do you think UNC going after Belichick is a move to build up them to take Clemson place in the ACC if they leave? I think it's just them. I don't even know they're going to hire Belichick. We'll see. Last I've heard, he's not been offered a job yet. He's interviewed. Saw where he interviewed for like 4 or 5 hours yesterday, I think it was, or the day before. But I think UNC is just trying to put the right coach in place to be as successful as they possibly can. I don't think it's got anything to do with Clemson. Got to get Maffa healthy for Texas. Maffa's not going to be healthy for Texas. It's just not going to happen. Barnes is a liability in pass coverage. Barnes is probably better suited for the nickel, but it depends on who he's covering. Other teams, they got really good offensive guys or offensive minded guys running their offenses and looking how to create mismatches. And I think you saw Rhett Lashley do that a couple of times on Barnes in that second half. He schemed up something to where they could get Barnes isolated on one of those wideouts, and that's probably a mismatch. But I do think Barnes is probably better suited to play the nickel. Do you think Adam Randall? I don't think they're moving Adam Randall to running back. No. Um, your starters hurt. The guys behind him are inexperienced, and without naming names, one or two of them probably aren't even Power 5 backs. Your top two are hurt. It's not like you don't have the numbers. They're full at running back. They got 5 right now, and they got one of the best in the country coming in. There's no reason to move Adam Randall to running back for next year. Let's see if Adam Randall is even here next year. We're talking about a guy who has seen his snaps decrease drastically over the course of the season. He very well might end up being a guy that looks to try and find himself a better opportunity out there. Am I surprised Noble Johnson entered the portal? No. He and Stellato and Randall were the top 3 receivers that I would have been keeping an eye on. I was actually surprised a little bit that Stellato didn't transfer after last year, but Johnson's just buried on the depth chart. Like I said earlier, man, he's never going to beat those guys out. I don't care how hard he works. Those are just generational type. We talk about generational talents at quarterback. Those two guys are kind of like that at receiver. He's just I'm just not surprised he's looking for somewhere he can carve out a better opportunity for himself. To beat Texas, we need to have our best game. Complete 4 quarters with the offense and the defense playing lights out. I 100% agree with that. I'm not all that confident you're going to get it. I don't know that Clemson's played one of those yet this year. I mean, I guess if they got it in them, now's the time to bring it out. His Easy running back one. Easy didn't even get a touch the other night. So, I mean, no. I would fully expect Moffa to still be the guy. Now, having said that, now you know that you're not going to have Haynes. It would behoove them to get Easy ready to roll, regardless of how much trust they have in him at this point. Cade misses too many throws that would be huge gains in TDs. I didn't see him missing those kind of throws Saturday night. I might be forgetting one or two, but the ones that would have went for big that didn't hit. I mean, I thought they were on the receivers. Playoffs should have stuck to 4 teams or even go back to the BCS format. I was not a big fan of playoff expansion. I hated the idea because throughout the history of the 4-team playoff, there's never been 4. There were never 4 teams capable of winning it all. You might have 2, you might have 3. Rarely did you have 4. I thought you finally had that last year in the final year of the playoff. But with the portal, it has created so much parity. You know, it probably needed to go to 8. I hate 12. I hate anything over 8. Um, it's too many. It just makes the regular season way less meaningful. I like it when if you lose a game, you got to worry about whether your playoff shots are over. I don't like it where you can lose 3 games and still get in. I'm not a big fan of that. Um, to me, if that's what you want, go watch the NFL. To me, that's not what college football is about. I do think 4 is not enough in the portal area, in the portal era, since it's created all this parity. But I do think 12 is too much, and 16 is going to be too much when it goes to that. And I've said it on here plenty of times. I think 10 years down the road, and it might not even take this long, but a decade from now, college football is going to look vastly different. I fully believe that the SEC and the Big Ten are going to break off from the NCAA and go do their own thing. And when they do that, they will have their own playoff consistent of just Big Ten teams and SEC teams. And it'll be kind of like an NFL or an NFC, AFC type deal with the NFL. Now, when that happens, depending on how many teams are in each league, I can see the number of playoff teams shrinking a little bit. If those conferences don't get a whole lot bigger, I could see them saying, "Hey, we don't need 16. Maybe we only need 8." But that'll just depend on what the final number looks like. And I want no part of going back to the BCS. How is 4 big and SEC teams somehow better than automatic qualifiers? I didn't say it was. I just said, that's what I think's coming. I'm just not a big fan of the AQs in college football. As much of a roller coaster ride this season has been. At the end of the day, we won another ACC championship, made it to college football playoff. Anything else, just icing on the cake. I do believe we can beat Texas. That's kind of where I'm at. I said before the season, I thought this was a Clemson team capable of making it to the playoff. I just didn't know what they were capable of doing once they got there. And I still kind of feel that way. I'll be honest, this team, I had a little bit higher of expectations for this team this year. Both sides of the ball. The offense has taken huge strides. Man, they have just struggled so much with consistency. It's hard to watch sometimes. Particularly when during that South Carolina game, I'll use that one for example because I just thought they got overly conservative the deeper we got into that thing. And, it's like they just knew the defense was going to hold on. Everybody else in the stadium knew it wouldn't. But, I didn't think they got overly conservative Saturday night. I just don't think nobody was executing. I mean, you can, as a play caller and as a coach, you can only do so much. Guys got to go out there and do it. Is Jarvis Green any more of a liability than Adams or EZ right now? I think there's a reason why he is, he might not have to go back and look at the depth chart to see exactly how they're listed. So, I don't want to say he's behind EZ on the depth chart, but if you look at the rotations in the games in which all of them have played, Green's the last one in. I think there's a reason for that. I watched Green a little bit in high school, not a lot. Watched him play live a couple of times. He put up video game like numbers, and you wonder why none of these schools are chasing him harder than they were. I think he only ended up with 2 Power 5 offers. And I remember talking to some people back then, and I had a couple people tell me, that they didn't know why, more schools weren't interested with him outside of, they thought some schools thought he was just a product of that system Dutch Fort runs. But I talked to somebody, might have been before the Citadel game. We were talking about Jarvis, and we were talking about potential portal candidates because he's definitely a guy I'd keep an eye on since he doesn't get any opportunity. And with Gideon coming in next year and Easy in front of him, I don't know that he will next year. But the person that I was talking to was telling me that he's probably more suited to play at the G5 level. That he's a solid back, that he just doesn't have the speed or the quickness to be successful at this level. So take that for what it's worth. Hire Maurice Drayton. Mike Reed is a great cornerbacks coach, but he is not a special teams coordinator. Clemson's got, I think it's 3 coaches dedicated to nothing but special teams. Those special team issues are not, I don't even know how involved Mike Reed is with that stuff. It could very well, I know he's out there coaching it a little bit at practice sometimes when they're kicking field goals, but I don't know how involved he is with the actual protection and those kind of things. I lean towards thinking that was more of them giving him an extra title to justify a pay raise. So I'd look a little bit deeper down the staff for when you want to point the finger at special teams issues. And I'm not even real sure which one to tell you to point at. Because like I said, there's 3 different ones. And I know one of them. There's one of them that's a former punter that works with the punters, and I can't remember which one he is. But other than that, I don't know what the other 2 do or what their specific duties are. One of them, I think their names are, one of them's Gilchrist and one of them's Jody Evans, if I'm remembering right. I can't remember the third one. If there's either 2 or 3. Can never remember. Sarian can probably tell you better than I can. He's got a much better memory than me, but I don't know that Mike Reed gets to blame for that. Not from me, anyways. Do you think? Oh, I already dressed out one time. Yes, he does go into prevent defense with the lead. He didn't go into prevent the other night when Clemson went up. Yeah, they started running, and they run some 3-3-5 in the first half. It just depended on the situation, and they did it a little bit in the fourth quarter, depending on the situation. And they might have run it a little bit more at the start of that last drive that tied it up. But once they got on the Clemson side of the field, they were mostly running 4-3, not prevent. And just because you're running a 3-3-5 doesn't necessarily mean you're running a prevent either. Clemson, there was times in that first half where Clemson was getting pressure with just rushing 3 guys. Sometimes you got to tip your cap to the other team when they make plays, and I think that was a big part of it Saturday night. We have a very good football team and should be complimenting our players. We're going to play a very good Texas football team who are going to play their best to win. I'm 100% against bashing guys, but I think, players at the collegiate level are 100% open to constructive criticism. And I have always believed that, even before they started making money. It's the world we live in. It kind of is what it is. If somebody don't play well, I think we all have the right to point that out and talk about it. If you don't think somebody's coaching well, I think you got the right to point it out and talk about it. Everybody don't have to agree on it, but I don't think there's anything wrong pointing out. But there's a line for me, and once you cross that line from constructive criticism to downright bashing, that's where you lose me. I don't even think you should do that to professional athletes at the NFL, MLB, NBA levels. Dion says Texas is a perfect is I guess he's meant perfect matchup for Clemson. He says Clemson will upset Texas because they have not been that impressive to me all year long. You know, Texas has been a little up and down this year, absolutely 100%. And I don't think Quinn Ewers is healthy. But if I'm Steve Sarkisian, I'm putting in some packages for Arch Manning and just run it. You know, Clemson's ends have been so bad at stopping or getting that edge set, you know, on opposite side of TJ Parker. I might would just let the quarterback run it every freaking time. How healthy is Tyler Brown? He looks pretty good to me. He had that tightrope surgery weeks ago. You know, he looks to be moving around pretty good. He played a few snaps the other night. I hadn't seen how many, but I did see him on the field once or twice. He's just not practicing weeks. They just started ramping back up in practice last week. Hopefully, they can get him really ramped up this week because he's a guy they could definitely use, particularly when the offense starts stalling out in the second half. But yeah, you know, he should be good to go. Just needs to knock the rust off. So Tink Kelly, Cole Turner. I haven't said any names were leaving, but you ask how the wide receiver room can get decimated by the portal that bad. Um, they watch two freshmen come in and take the jobs. You know, that's just it is what it is. You know, that's the downside to having two freshmen that are so good they can come in and beat everybody out. Again, you know, you say it doesn't make sense if they all want playing time, addition by subtraction. They're not getting the playing time they want at Clemson right now. Some of them aren't. They want to go and get more. And if Tyler Grisham yanked those two freshmen off the field right now to start playing Randall more or Tink more or Cole Turner more, his fan base would be in his front yard wanting to burn his house down. It's just kind of the world we live in now. What's the deal with these college football playoff on campus round one games only provide normal ticket numbers to the visitors? That's controlled by the college football playoff, if I got that right. I don't think the schools decide that. And yeah, I know IPTAY sent out email to all IPTAY members or season ticket holders, I think Sunday, tell them there would be no requests taken because they didn't have the tickets. The baseball games in Texas are set. It's not a tournament. Clemson's got their three opponents. They know who they'll play, what days and what time, and they'll be done. They don't think they play. I know they play Ole Miss. I can never remember. I think they go up there and don't play Texas though. I think they play Ole Miss. Let's see. I pull it up right here. First day they play Oklahoma State. Second day they play Arizona. And the third day they play Ole Miss. And two of those games they will be without Eric Bakich, the first two games. He'll be serving his suspension. That's right. Get your auto glass, CA glass. Clemson must go in the portal and add to that defensive line depth. I think the Georgia Tech wide receiver would be a perfect addition to the offense. See, I think Clemson definitely got to address the defensive end spot, no doubt. I think they should have done it last year. Wide receiver is going to be a little trickier, especially, assuming Moore, Wesco, and Brown are all back. You don't have starting jobs to sell any of those guys. It's going to make it a little bit harder to attract, the bigger portal names. I would probably be looking for guys that are a notch below that. Somebody, how can I say it? Maybe even a guy or two from the G5 level that they really like, that they think can come in and make an impact at this level. Kind of think about it that way instead of looking for the big name guys like the kid out of Kentucky or this kid from Georgia Tech or the Conception kid from North Carolina State, and the bigger name guys, the hotter commodity guys that are wide receivers. They're going to be commanding big time deals. Yeah, Maffa's got a shoulder injury. It's a labrum. All right, here's two right here that I'm going to strongly disagree with. This guy says Cade lays the ball on the ground. He's not fumbled much at all this year. Cade isn't big enough to handle 15 carries. That's crap too. He did 13 the other night. Again, 3 of them were QB sneaks out of the end zone, but he absolutely can handle 15 carries. And his fumbling issues are in the past. Yeah, sure, I get it. He put one on the ground the other night. He's also dealing with something with one of his hands, which probably played a part in that. That guy has cut down on his turnovers tremendously this year. He has been very good at protecting the football. Perfect? No, but I don't think anybody is. But that is an area that he has made marked improvement in. $511 tickets on StubHub, $250 for Upper Tech. Not too bad, but only 3,500 Clemson. I've seen where Clemson only got 1,000. The allotment was only 1,000 or 1,500. I've not seen anywhere where it was 3,500. If it was 3,500, the school probably would have sold some to IPTAY members. But that's a college football playoff thing, man. These aren't supposed to be bowl games. They're supposed to be playoff games. But, yeah, I get it. It sucks that the visiting team doesn't really have a lot of access. But what I would say to that is, don't put yourself in the position to be one of those visiting teams. Secure one of those first-round buys or secure one of the 5 through 8 spots and play a home game. Problem solved. When you're the 9, 10, 11, 12 seed, you're supposed to be at a disadvantage. SMU committed some bad penalties. The referees were once again atrocious. I don't think they call holding. I don't even think they even call holding anymore. And Blake Miller was getting away with some egregious holds. SMU got away with some. The freaking face mask right there in front of the head official's face that doesn't get called. That roughing the passer call that they called on SMU when the hit on Cade was crap. Throwing the flag and trying to call TJ Moore for a pick when he's just running around, crap. I just don't understand how we've gotten how officiating has fallen this far, man. It's bad, just terrible. My problem is it seems lack of development if all the running backs are not to be trusted yet, or they're just not that good. It's I don't think that it's not is I don't think that it's they don't trust Haynes, and that's not why you. Let me rephrase that. Let me start over. I think there are reasons why it's been Maffa more so than all those other guys. And I think you saw some of that. It's not about development. Each guy develops at his own pace. You see Adams calling for that fair catch. That guy knows not to do that. I mean, you can blame that on coaching all you want, but that's on him. I've heard that Haynes has had some fumbling issues in practice. That's on him. I think Phil Maffa, when he was close to 100% earlier in the season, was a much better running back then than he was when he got on campus. I've seen progression with running backs since Spiller's. I get it. Everybody wants to fire all the coaches every time something doesn't go the way they want it to go, but I don't think you got a problem with CJ Spiller, you definitely do not want to go to the portal for one. You go and recruit over Gideon Davidson, who's coming in this next class, he'll be gone. Especially the way his recruitment played out. If you don't follow recruiting closely, I can tell you that guy was close to not be. I mean, like extremely close to not being a part of this class. If some other people had their way, he probably wouldn't be. And if they thought that his family thought that there was this big time problem with the running backs getting developed, he'd never have come. Wouldn't even thought about it, much less signed. But I don't know that it's a developmental problem more so than it's been in a couple of misses in recruiting. For example, they waited on Trevor Etienne the entire recruiting cycle. He decides at the last, even though it was known that, or most people, were saying he wasn't coming to Clemson, Dabo still kept his word and told him he would wait before he moved on to another running back. He decides at the last minute he's going to Florida. Well, all the running backs are gone. They had to scramble for somebody else, and they ended up taking Keith Adams. They really liked Jay Haynes, but he was not ready to play as a freshman. He's much closer to being ready to play this year. Again, that's signs of progress. That's development. He's much better now than he was when he got there. And they ended up adding Jarvis Green as a late addition to that class, who's probably not a Power 5 running back. It's sometimes it goes deeper than just development, and because the coach sucks. It's not always that cut and dry. I mean, when you got a running back who is serving as one of the up backs on kickoff return and he signals for a fair catch, I mean, do you think the coaches told him to do that? You think he was coached to do that? I don't. I mean, that's 100% on the player. You have to earn the trust of those coaches by not doing those kind of boneheaded things. I mean, that's one of the most boneheaded things that I've seen all year long. And it caused, Azuiume to muff it because he thought he was going to catch the ball, and he decides at the last minute he's not, even though he signaled for the fair catch. It's just a disaster. And I just, I understand when you got guys doing those kind of things under the lights. I understand why they don't get more opportunities. I think it's more about maturing as a player than it is development. Dabo gave Easy an ear. I think he was actually doing that. I think he was talking to Adams. I went back and watched it today because I thought that at first too. I think it was actually Adams he was giving the earful on, or the earful to. Clemson should have used one of their timeouts on the last drive. Why take the timeouts to the locker room? Defense was exhausted. It's easy to say that in hindsight, but you want to keep those things, man, in case you need them. If SMU does score, I see your point. I don't, I don't know that that's something to be overly critical about. Riley needs to be upstairs like Tony Elliott when Clemson made the run so that he can see the field. He's the one in charge of calling the plays. I mean, he's where he wants to be. He thinks he's better served on the field. I see people saying that about Wes. I've even said that about Wes in the past, but I just don't know how, I don't know how much difference it really makes in the grand scheme of things, man. You want your coaches where they're comfortable at. I don't know that makes a whole lot of difference. He likes to be down there and be able to talk to those quarterbacks face to face instead of talking to them on the radio. And it's a communication thing, and that's the way he likes it. Late game defense problems for the first team seem to coincide with Capehart going down. Hey, he's a big loss. Make no mistake, man. But he was out there on the field in the fourth quarter of the night some too. But he's not playing a lot right now, though. Texas defense is legit, but I would argue South Carolina has the better front seven. They are opportunistic on defense. Yeah, I would. I don't know about the better front seven, but I would definitely say South Carolina's front four is better. Their secondary might be too. It's definitely comparable. I don't know how good Texas's linebackers are, but to me that was, I think South Carolina's a lead on the front, a lead on the back. Maybe not in the middle, but that don't mean they're not good. I don't know that their linebackers are elite. But yeah, I think it's definitely comparable for sure. And no, they've not been explosive on offense this year. They've been very inconsistent. When the rosters expand, what is the time? There is no timeline. You don't have to. You don't even have to carry 105. You just can't carry more than 105. Oh, we already run way over here. Do I think they would take JB back? Probably not. Feel as though Cade gets tight in the second half of games. It's like he missed layups in the second half. I didn't think he missed a bunch of layups the other night. I mean, there was that one third down pass late that he probably should have went to Moore instead of Antonio. But, other than that, I thought a lot of his throws were on target. Some of them were just defended by the defenders. There was, I don't know, 2 or 3, maybe 4 that got knocked away by the defensive back. I mean, there were some really good defensive plays made in that game by SMU in the fourth quarter, in the second half. Yeah, I would be surprised if Dabo doesn't get Marty straight, and he seems like he was genuinely feeling his business. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not diving deep into coaching stuff. Do you see Clemson making the playoff? Will help Clemson attract portal players in areas of need. It definitely won't hurt. Definitely won't hurt. I just think with Clemson, you got to it's gonna come down to the evaluations, man. You gotta find somebody you think you can get that's not just looking for the biggest payday, and at the same time, somebody that you think is good enough to come in and making an immediate impact at a couple of these spots. Now, at least one of the ends, and at least one, or if you start losing a bunch of wide receivers, at least one of the wide receivers, maybe two. Lack of execution this late in the season is a lack. It might not be either. It might be just the fact that it might be the players, man. I just think we have gotten to the point where the players never shoulder any of the responsibility when things don't go right. It's either the coaches, and it's always the coach's fault. It's never the players' fault. I mean, the coaches ain't out there dropping passes. You think that Chris Rump's probably one of the better defensive end coaches in the country. You think he's not out there coaching K. Denoff and Shaheem Lawson how to set the edge? I don't know if it's just that cut and dry. I agree with this. It looks like Woods has put on some bad weight during the season. And I remember when they originally talked about moving him outside the end. One of the first things I asked Dabo was, were they going to need him? Did they want him to lose a few pounds? And, what weight were they thinking? And he was talking about, I think he said 290. He never got close to that, man. Never got close to that. But he does look like he's put on some bad weight. And I saw him subbing himself out multiple times Saturday night. To build depth, is Clemson going to focus more in-state recruiting? Clemson doesn't have to. Clemson doesn't have to focus on the in-state. They're usually, a lot of the time, more often than not, they can come in and get who they want out of the state. Not always, but a lot of the time. You also got to remember that at least half of this state grew up South Carolina fans, and it's probably a little more than half. It's probably more South Carolina fans in South Carolina than there are Clemson fans. And when you're recruiting in the state, a lot of times you're trying to recruit a kid that grew up hating you. It's not always easy. Fortunately, the success Clemson's had, they don't have to put all that focus on in-state recruiting. I know people don't like to hear this, but this is not a talent-rich state. If you want to win at the highest level, you got to recruit Georgia, Florida, Texas, North Carolina. Not recruiting South Carolina hard has not hurt Clemson, and I don't see that it will in the future. You find a guy here and there that you like and you think you can get, and you go get him. We've seen some examples in the past couple of recruiting classes where Clemson's tried to go after a guy or two that grew up rooting for South Carolina, and guess where they ended up going? South Carolina. I mean, that's not the case every time. There's been a time or two where they've won over a guy that grew up rooting for South Carolina, but it doesn't happen very often. So it's another one of those things that's just not that cut and dry. They're just at a point where they don't have to rely on this state, and all the surrounding states produce a whole lot more talent than this state does. Right about Haynes, great player, a little small. He's added a little bit of bulk since he's got there, and I don't know. He's not the big bodied back like Maffa or Will Shipley. He's a little bit smaller, shiftier. To me, it's not so much about his size. I don't think he needs to add a whole lot of size. I just think he needs to get a little bit stronger, and I think he could do that at the size he is right now, because you don't want to put some weight on him and slow him down. I just think he needs to continue hitting the weight room and get a little bit stronger, and that'll make him a much more effective back. DZ tweets today something about guys. He's always he tweets religious stuff a lot. I've heard nothing. You can't read stuff in the tweet. You can't always read into tweets that way, man. We have no idea what they mean, and it's more often than not, it's not about what you think it is. I would be very surprised if he hit the portal after just 1 year, knowing he was, he knew there was going to be a good chance he redshirted this year. Yes, I think Clemson will try to add a receiver out of the portal. Yes, Tyler Brown was dressed. He was on the field for a snap or two. All right, big man. What did West change the defense to? I need to hear this one. I mean, they were doing. He didn't change anything that they weren't doing in the first half already. I mean, so let's hear, what did they change it to that they hadn't already been doing in the first half? Saturday night. So he does it every game, and it's working. Changes it every game. I want to hear what he changed Saturday night that he wasn't already doing in the first half. Okay, now you want to call me a dumbass. They don't nobody get on here and bitch and moan and cry more than you. And, you don't know as much ball as you think you do. You are not the troll that you think you are. And to be quite honest, you are no longer welcome here. Avion Terrell has to play better. He gives too much cushion. Again, there are times when you want to be in press coverage. There are times when you don't. It just depends on what you're trying to do. I think Terrell's had a pretty dang good season. I didn't think he played particularly well. I think it was in the Pitt game. And he had some balls caught on him the other night. Was it because he was playing terrible? I don't think so, man. I just think those guys made some plays. It definitely wasn't his best game that I've seen this year, but it wasn't his worst. SMU has a pulse. I thought Garrett called one of his best games of the season against SMU. Yeah, I didn't have. It's outside of when the couple times they caught those outside pitches to Moff. I hate those. They never work. No, I didn't have some huge problem with the play calling. And again, it's easy to be critical of play calling, especially when you don't know what the play caller's thinking. They a lot of times they got to be thinking 2-3 plays ahead. You never know when he's calling this play to try to set up that play. Heck, who knows? Maybe one of those outside pitches was down on the goal line. The very next play to hit Brainstorm over the middle. Either way, I still hate those outside pitch plays. They never work. But I didn't think they got conservative in the fourth quarter. I just think they didn't execute. And I thought, there were some times where it looked like Cade had a guy open and he threw the ball on time and on point, and it got batted down. Good coverage. Do I think Dabo got a call from the ACC to call the Dogs off at halftime? No. No. I think if anybody was going to get a call from the ACC, it wouldn't have been Dabo. I don't know that they're all that high on him right now, but obviously they wanted 2 teams in, but there's no way Dabo's ever going to – he would never agree to that. Yeah, Cole Turner was another one that had a bad drop the other night in a critical spot in that second half. All right, man, we have run way over here. Make sure I try to scroll through stuff to make sure I haven't. It's not something down here we hadn't at least talked about a little bit. Don't get the Cade. The hate Cade still gets something. Some fans think that Perriman should start because he had a couple scoring drives in the scrimmage game. Yeah, there are some people out there that I've seen, clamoring for Perriman here this season. But yeah, I think Cade's had a really good year. I think he's shown a lot of growth in that. And on top of that, I don't think I think he's still got another step he can take. Easy and Davison are only. I disagree with that too. I think Haynes is a Power 5 back. He's just not there yet. I don't know if he's going to be an every down back, but I definitely think he can play at this level. Our running back recruiting has been pedestrian into the 2025. Well, it was the past 2 years, but before that it wasn't. And again, they went all in on ETN, which was probably a mistake, and ended up having to actually, I would say it was that year. They went all in on ETN and, waited on him, and that's probably a mistake. And then they had to settle for Keith Adams. Last year, they got the guy they wanted. They wanted Jay Haynes. That's who they got. You can like that, don't like it, but that's who they wanted. I'm not going to get too deep into the details with Davidson because a lot of the stuff that happened with him happened after he was committed. But he was very close to not being a part of this class. And Um, Bringing a running back in on top of him would be a big mistake. There's running back recruiting is the problem at running back. Again, I think what happened in the class with ETN hurt them, but they got the guy they wanted last year, and I still think Haynes has a lot of potential. I'm not sold on the fact that he can be an every down back. I know other people that are. Um, I just think we've gotten to the point where if a guy ain't, lights out as a freshman or a redshirt freshman, all of a sudden he's a scrub. I just don't think that's the case here. In the classes before that, they got Shipley and Moffa. Those were two highly rated backs. They just took Davidson. He's probably the best back in the class. In my eyes, he is. If you just want to go by the rankings, he's definitely top 5. So, I don't know that running back recruiting is as bad as some of y'all are making it out. We don't have a running back on campus who would start in Athens, and Clemson can't afford to pay them the way they do in Athens. I know it. I know what ETN was asking for when he went in the portal. There ain't nobody on Clemson's roster making that. It's not an apples to apples comparison, and y'all are making it out like it is. Did Makuba transfer for the? There was more to Makuba's transfer than just chasing money. I'll just say that. Put Peter Woods on the field goal blocking team. He is on the he is already. Lawson and Denoff don't have any pass rush moves. I thought both of them got in the backfield a lot the other night. The problem is, when you do that and you don't keep contained, you leave the rushing lanes open. They over pursue. They get overly aggressive. They don't play with a lot of. They're not very. Their technique needs a lot of work. I just think Denoff is kind of who he is at this point. Lawson is still, learning. He was kind of a project when he got there, not just from a, weight wise. He had a lot to learn when it comes to playing defensive end, and I think his problems with the run game. But both of them struggle setting the edge, and keeping the quarterback in the pocket. They always get too upfield. But I thought Denoff was in the backfield a lot Saturday. Hopefully Mayo can be a pass rush specialist, because I think Clemson's absolutely going to take at least one end in the portal. And I also think Mayo's got an extremely high ceiling. I saw him Saturday night. Just, from a physical standpoint, he looks really good. That dude he is a mountain of a man. 6'6", 6'7". He's probably 260. Man, he is a big dude, and he's got a very quick, explosive first step. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do next year. But I fully expect Clemson to go shopping for an end in the portal, at least one. 188 viewers. You need to try. I don't even know what Super Chats is, but I don't know. You might just be watching on Twitter. This thing's streamed out a bunch of different spots. There's been 10 times more than that on here tonight, man. I appreciate everybody that's tuned in too. I fully expect Ewers to play and them to probably have some packages for Manning to attack Clemson's weakness, which is stopping the run on that side opposite TJ Parker. Just reach out to me on Twitter, man. I'll be glad to. No, that guy didn't know what he's been in here all year from time to time. I mean, I don't know. I'm surprised I hadn't already kicked him out of here because his language is atrocious and he's very bad at trolling. And I'm all for, I got a very colorful vocabulary myself, but time and place. How do I like working for the Insider? I love it. I have loved every minute of it. Robert's real easy to work for, extremely easy to work for. I've enjoyed it very much. I already knew Will from before, so me and him were already kind of buddies, known him for a few years, but I didn't know Robert very well. We were acquaintances. We didn't talk all, we'd speak and, small talk and those kind of things, but I didn't really get to know him until I went over there and started working for him. And I've really enjoyed getting to know him, man. I've spent a lot of time with him this football season. We make the road trips together when we usually drive. So I'm in the car with him a lot. And I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I have not regretted it for 1 second. I hope I am there for a very long time. I think that only time that pitch play worked, it was against North Carolina State. See, I don't even remember that. You're telling me it worked once? Okay. At least it worked once. Has Cole Turner been injured this year? No. Nope. He played some the other night, dropped a critical pass. Getting a new punter next year. Yeah, Aiden Swanson's out of eligibility. And I saw somebody ask me about the punting earlier, and I skipped over it, meaning to go back to it. So I'm going to address it here. I thought Swanson, showed a lot of signs of progress last year. I thought he was really solid. He's been a little up and down this year, though. He's not been as consistent as I thought he would be. They got Jack Smith, who's a scholar. He's a scholarship player, or he's a punter that's on scholarship. Already been on the roster a couple years now. He's like 6'5", 240, something like that. He's a big dude. He's got a big leg. But every time Dabo talks about him, he talks about how he's been inconsistent. So, I mean, if he's not where you need him to be, Swanson's gone. Do you have to go to the portal to bring in a punter? We'll see where they are next year. But, yeah, to answer your question, they'll have a new punter. Do I think Vizina transfers? No, I do not. I thought there was a possibility. I had talked about the possibility a few times during the season, but I don't think that's going to happen. So, Maffa over Adams against Texans. Are we playing with fate too much? I thought it was a bad decision. Haynes returning kicks. You have to go with what you got. Again, I just don't know that they trust Adams, and I don't know that he's going to give you more than what Maffa can. There's a reason that guy's not played much this year. And I'll give you an example of that. Go watch that kickoff where he called for a fair catch and didn't even catch it. That's not the kind of things that lead coaches to put a whole lot of faith in you. If it's me, I'm trying to get the freshman, as up to speed as possible, more so over Adams. You say it was a bad decision to have Haynes returning kicks. Well, he was not supposed to bring that out. He was supposed to just fair catch it. And if you do what you're told, then you don't run the risk of getting hurt. I know that kind of sounds harsh, and I'm trying to put it on him. Don't get me wrong, he's a player, and players are going to try to make plays. But, at the end of the day, he was told to fair catch that kick. I didn't ever say I thought he'd leave. I just said, if Cade comes back, it's something to watch. But it sounds like that's not going to happen. He's planning to stay based on everything I've heard. Anyways, want to once again thank my great sponsors over there at A-Glass. 2 locations, Florence, Sumter. Been in the business for a long time, man. Those guys are really good at what they do. Auto glass, all your auto glass needs. They do repair, they do replacement, whatever it is you might need. Get yourself a free quote right there, myaglass.com. Want to thank everybody that tuned in tonight. We had a big crowd in here again, although by the time we got to the end of it, we were -1. Oh, well. Texas up next. Week off for the football team this week. From a game standpoint, don't mean we're going to take a week off. We'll be right back here next week. I'm going to do it. I'll have done a lot more homework on Texas by then. I've only got to see them play a couple times this year, so I'm not nearly as familiar with them as I will be a week from now. So we can dive into it a little deeper. Clemson basketball hosts Memphis Saturday, 11 a.m. Early tip. Another big game for Clemson. They lost at Memphis last year, so this is kind of a revenge game. We'll see if they can keep that winning streak going. If you've not hit that like button or that subscribe button, please do so. And check us out on the site, ClemsonInsider.com, and I will see you next week.